Hello, explorers. Our world hides more than history books will ever tell. Beneath the surface of time lie artifacts that shouldn't exist, objects that whisper secrets of forgotten civilizations. Some say they were created by hands not human. Others believe they're proof that our ancestors knew far more than we think. Each mystery challenges everything we know about the past, and the truth waiting behind them might just rewrite it all. So, sit tight and let your mind wander beyond logic, because what we're about to uncover isn't just history. It's a code left by time itself. Now, let's step into the unknown. The Baigong Pipes, China's impossible metal mystery. High in the barren mountains of western China lies a place few dare to visit. It's dry, desolate, and silent, almost otherworldly. The locals call it Mount Baigong. But beneath its lonely slopes, something impossible has been found. Hidden inside caves and running through solid rock are hundreds of ancient metal pipes, some embedded deep within the mountain itself. They twist, turn, and branch like veins of steel running through stone. But the real question is, who put them there and when? At first glance, it looks like the remains of some ancient industrial structure. Some of the pipes lead deep into a cave that opens toward the vast, shimmering Qinghai Lake. Others are buried in the surrounding terrain, poking out of the sand like fragments of a forgotten machine. But here's where it gets strange. The pipes are ancient. When Chinese scientists tested them, their age defied logic. They were said to be around 150,000 years old. That's not just before modern technology. It's long before recorded human civilization itself. Let that sink in. A network of iron-like pipes, thousands of years before the invention of metal smelting. How could that exist? The discovery came to light in the early 2000s, when a group of researchers was investigating strange geological formations near the Delingha region. They expected rocks, fossils, and mineral veins. But instead, they found a cave system lined with metal. The pipes were of varying sizes, some thick as a human arm, others no wider than a straw. And they weren't random. They seemed to be arranged with purpose, forming a system that looked engineered. When the samples were tested, the results confused everyone. The pipes were composed mostly of iron, but also contained trace elements like silicon, calcium, and even rare metals. Even stranger, part of the metal had oxidized, turning into a material that resembled rust, but the pattern of oxidation didn't match natural corrosion. It looked like controlled heating or manufacturing. But who, 150,000 years ago, was manufacturing metal pipes? The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences sent investigators to study the phenomenon. Some scientists suggested that the pipes might be fossilized tree roots or a natural mineral formation, something that looked artificial but wasn't. But geological analysis quickly broke that theory apart. The pattern of the pipes, their hollow interiors, their even spacing, all pointed to deliberate construction. And then came the detail that sent this story spiraling into mystery territory. When some of the pipes were cut open, their interiors were smooth, almost polished. Others showed circular markings, as if something had bored through them at high speed. A few even formed perfect right angles. It was as though they had been shaped using machines that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric China. One geologist described it best: "If this is natural, then nature is a better engineer than we are." So what are the explanations? Let's explore a few. The first theory claims these pipes were part of an ancient water system, maybe remnants of a lost civilization long before the dynasties of China. The pipes could have carried water or gas between the caves and the lake. Supporters of this theory point to how some of the pipes lead directly into Qinghai Lake itself, suggesting a possible flow or drainage mechanism. But for that to be true, we'd have to accept that an advanced civilization existed in China over 100,000 years ago, something mainstream archaeology rejects. Then, there's the extraterrestrial theory. According to local legend, Baigong Mountain was once home to a massive pyramid-like structure, possibly built by beings from the sky. Some ancient alien theorists believe the pipes were part of a power or propulsion system, remnants of an ancient landing site. In fact, the area has long been associated with UFO sightings and mysterious lights in the night sky. To believers, the pipes weren't human-made at all. They were technological relics left behind by visitors from beyond Earth. However, not everyone agrees with these wild interpretations. Some geologists argue the pipes might be the result of a rare natural process called iron concretion, where groundwater carrying iron particles seeps through rock, leaving behind tube-like deposits as it hardens. But even this explanation struggles with the regularity and pattern of the Baigong formations. Natural processes are chaotic. These pipes are not. They run in straight lines, connect at angles, and sometimes even branch like a blueprint. The more you dig, the stranger it gets. When a piece of one pipe was tested in a Beijing laboratory, scientists found traces of organic matter, plant material. It suggested the pipes might have once been living roots that somehow absorbed metallic elements over thousands of years. But that still didn't explain the geometric patterns, or why some pipes led deep into solid rock where no roots could have grown. It's as if the mountain itself was built around them. Locals have their own stories. For generations, herders and villagers spoke of strange lights appearing over the mountains at night. Glowing orbs that hovered, then disappeared. They said the mountain was cursed, that the pipes were the veins of metal gods buried beneath the earth. When the story went public, tourists and journalists flooded the region, but the site was quickly restricted by local authorities. Today, Baigong Mountain is heavily monitored, and access to the cave is limited. Why the secrecy? Some say it's because there's nothing there, just an overblown legend. Others whisper that scientists discovered something they couldn't explain and decided to keep it quiet. The truth, for now, remains locked inside the mountain. Imagine if those pipes were in fact ancient technology. Maybe not alien, but human. Could they belong to a civilization wiped out long before the first pyramids were built? A forgotten age of engineers whose cities have crumbled into dust? If so, Baigong would be one of the last traces of their existence, a fossilized reminder that history might be far older than we think. Even modern archaeologists struggle with the implications. Our textbooks say organized human civilization began around 6,000 years ago. Yet here we have metalwork potentially dated back more than 100,000 years. If the dating is correct, it changes everything. It means intelligent beings were building, designing, and creating on Earth, while modern humans were still learning to make fire. So maybe Baigong isn't just a mystery, it's a message. A reminder that our planet has stories written in iron and stone. Stories that challenge what we think we know. Whether the pipes are ancient machinery, alien relics, or a trick of nature, one thing is certain. They exist, and we can't fully explain them. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part. Not every secret is meant to be solved. Some are meant to make us look up at the stars, or deep beneath our feet, and wonder what other impossible traces of the past still lie hidden, waiting to be found. Before we dive into the next mystery, make sure you've subscribed, explorers. It helps the journey continue, and your support keeps these ancient secrets alive. Drop your thoughts and wild theories in the comments below. What do you think about this discovery? And if you've got an idea for the next mystery we should explore, let me know. your suggestion might become the next video. Because trust me, what's coming next is far stranger, far older, and far more mysterious than anything we've uncovered so far. Now, take a deep breath. Let's continue our path through the shadows of forgotten history. The Ulfberht Sword, forged beyond time. Imagine holding a weapon so far ahead of its time that it shouldn't even exist. A sword that defies logic, history, and metallurgy. A weapon so perfect that scientists, blacksmiths, and historians have spent centuries trying to figure out how it was made. This isn't a myth. This is the Ulfberht Sword, the real-life blade that shouldn't have been possible in the Viking Age. Picture it. Northern Europe, more than 1,000 years ago. The world was still dark, cold, and dangerous. The Vikings ruled the seas with their longships, raiding, trading, and carving fear into every coastline they touched. Most warriors carried simple iron swords, brittle and dull, breaking often in battle. But then, among those same ranks, there appeared a blade so pure, so light, and so sharp, it sliced through chainmail like paper. Its name? Ulfberht. You see, the thing about this sword is that it wasn't just a good weapon. It was impossibly good. Modern scientists say it was made from steel so pure, it wouldn't appear again in Europe for nearly 1,000 years. Not until the Industrial Revolution. The metal in these swords, known as crucible steel, required temperatures of nearly 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit to make. Temperatures no Viking forge should have been able to reach. Yet somehow, someone did it. And here's the twist. Each Ulfberht sword was engraved with a single word across its blade, plus Ulfberht. Some think that was the name of a blacksmith. Others believe it was more like a brand, a mark of divine craftsmanship. Maybe even a sacred secret passed through generations. Whatever the truth is, one thing's certain. When a warrior carried a real Ulfberht, everyone knew it. Now, historians first stumbled upon these blades in the 1800s, buried deep in Viking graves. Since then, more than 170 have been found across Europe. But not all of them are real. Some are fakes, copies made by less skilled smiths trying to ride the reputation of the original. You can actually tell the difference. The real ones have that flawless steel, shining even after 1,000 years underground. The fakes, on the other hand, rusted and cracked. They're metal full of impurities. So here's the question that's haunted experts for decades. How could a Viking, with basic tools and primitive forges, create something that required the precision of modern science? Let's slow down for a second. During the 9th century, Europe's metalworkers were still figuring out how to control carbon in iron. Most swords of that era were made from what's called bloomery steel, a rough, uneven material smelted at low temperatures. It worked, but barely. Those swords bent, broke, and dulled easily. Yet Ulfberht steel was on a completely different level. Scientists testing fragments found carbon levels almost identical to modern high-grade steel. That means whoever forged it had to melt the iron completely, remove slag impurities, and control carbon input with near-perfect accuracy. That's not medieval skill, that's industrial science. So what's the theory? Some believe the Vikings didn't actually make the steel. They might have traded for it, imported it from somewhere far to the east, maybe from Persia or even India, where crucible steel known as woots was already being made. That's possible since the Vikings traveled far beyond what most people imagine. They reached as far as Constantinople, Baghdad, even deep into Asia. So yeah, they could have stumbled upon this high-tech metal and then branded it as their own. But still, importing steel is one thing. Forging it into a sword so flawless that it outlasted empires, that's another story. Because these blades weren't just made of good metal, they were made with genius. Perfect balance, uniform edges, flexible, but unbreakable. Even with Woot's steel, you'd need extraordinary control to make something like that. It's almost as if whoever made the Ulfberht had knowledge far beyond the rest of the world. Knowledge that shouldn't have existed then. And here's the weirdest part. The Ulfberht inscription itself. On some swords, the letters are spelled differently, plus Ulfberht HT, plus Ulfberht's plus, or even slightly distorted versions. It's as if several people tried to copy the same name, but didn't quite know how. Kind of like ancient counterfeiting. Some even believe the original Ulfberht wasn't a person at all, but a symbol, a code passed through secret blacksmith guilds, maybe linked to monasteries or mysterious orders that protected forbidden knowledge. Think about it. During that time, most of Europe's literacy was locked inside monasteries. If someone there had access to ancient Roman or Eastern texts about metallurgy, they might have rediscovered lost techniques. Maybe Ulfberht was one of them, a monk, a craftsman, someone who knew secrets from civilizations long gone, secrets that even kings couldn't comprehend. But that's not all. In 2011, a modern blacksmith named Richard Furrer tried to recreate the Ulfberht sword using traditional tools. No electricity, no modern machinery. It took him months of trial and error, using iron, carbon, and extreme heat. When he finally succeeded, he said it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. The temperature had to be precise. One mistake and the blade would shatter. When he finished, his sword matched the real Ulfberht almost perfectly. But here's the kicker. He used knowledge we've only rediscovered in the last century. So how did someone 1,000 years ago pull it off so effortlessly? Some people say divine inspiration. Others whisper about lost civilizations, maybe survivors of older, more advanced cultures whose knowledge slipped through history. It sounds crazy, but the evidence keeps hinting that the ancients knew more than we give them credit for. You know, every time archaeologists think they've understood the Vikings, something like this appears and flips the story upside down. The Ulfberht sword is like a fingerprint, proof that our ancestors might have had access to secrets that time tried to erase. There's even a darker angle to it. Some theories claim that Ulfberht wasn't just a swordsmith, but the head of a cult or a secret brotherhood that guarded knowledge of fire and metal. Maybe the plus symbols around the name weren't decorative. Maybe they were sacred signs, ancient marks of protection, or warnings. If you think about it, each sword was almost like a ritual object, perfectly made, buried with its owner, never to be used again. Almost like the maker didn't want the technology to spread. And that brings us to something even more mysterious. After the 11th century, the Ulfberht swords vanish completely, gone from history. No records, no successors, no one claiming the name again. The technology disappears for nearly 800 years. If it was just a regular steelmaking method, someone would have kept it going. But nope, gone, as if erased. So what happened? Did the knowledge die with one man? Was it destroyed intentionally? Or did it come from somewhere we still can't trace? A source that simply stopped existing? Whatever the case, the sudden disappearance of such advanced metallurgy doesn't make sense. Not unless it wasn't meant to continue. There's also something else. The way the swords were distributed. Most were found in graves belonging to elite warriors or nobles, buried deep with treasures. It's almost like these swords weren't just weapons. They were symbols. Keys, maybe, to something larger. Some archaeologists even noticed runes and hidden marks etched into the tang, the part of the sword hidden inside the handle. Marks no one would ever see. Why carve them there? Were they charms? Signatures? Coordinates? No one knows. It's those tiny, hidden details that make historians go insane trying to decode what was going on. And the more you think about it, the stranger it gets. Because if Vikings had mastered crucible steel, Even by accident, Europe would have entered the modern age centuries earlier. They could have revolutionized weaponry, tools, construction, everything. But that didn't happen. Which means maybe they weren't the ones who really made it. Maybe someone gave it to them. There are a few out there theories that the steel came from traders connected to the Silk Road, who carried lost knowledge from India or Persia to the north. Or even more bizarre, that the Ulfberht swords are remnants of an even older civilization, long vanished, whose technology occasionally reappears like a whisper in history. You know, like Atlantis or the mythic Hyperborea. Sounds crazy, but sometimes history is crazy. And you can't ignore one chilling fact. Each Ulfberht sword feels deliberate. The perfection wasn't random. The symmetry, the balance, the chemical purity, everything feels designed. Purposeful. Whoever made them wanted them to endure, to be remembered, to stand as proof of what humans or something else could do. Today, when you see one of these blades in a museum, it doesn't even look old. It gleams, smooth, untouched by time. It's like the sword itself refuses to die. That's the haunting beauty of it. 1,000 years later, it still mocks our assumptions about the past. So the next time someone says the ancients were primitive, just remember the Ulfberht, a sword that shouldn't exist, a blade forged beyond its time, maybe a whisper from a forgotten age, reminding us that history isn't written only in books. Sometimes it's hidden in steel. The Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, the artifact that shouldn't exist. If you ever find yourself walking near the quiet shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, you might not realize that beneath those calm blue waters, one of the strangest mysteries in American archaeology was discovered. A small black, egg-shaped stone that refuses to be explained. It doesn't look like much at first glance, just a smooth piece of quartzite with odd carvings. But the closer you look, the more it starts to feel wrong. Not because of what it is, but because of what it represents. Back in 1872, a group of workers was digging post holes for a fence on a lakeside property owned by a wealthy businessman named Seneca Ladd. As they pulled up dirt, their shovels struck something hard. They brushed away the soil and found an oval stone about 6 inches long, polished like glass, darker than the surrounding earth, and covered with symbols that no one could recognize. It wasn't buried with any pottery, bones, or relics, just sitting there, alone, sealed inside the earth as if it had been hidden deliberately. At first, people thought it was a Native American artifact, but that idea didn't last long. The carvings on it were unlike any local tribal design. On one side, there were strange patterns, arrows, circles, faces, a moon-like crescent, and what seemed to be corn or wheat. On the other side, a spiral, crossed lines, and symbols that looked almost like ancient writing. At both ends were perfectly drilled holes, one straight through, from top to bottom, the other at a right angle intersecting it. Whoever made those holes used precision drilling, the kind of control that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric North America. Even modern experts struggled to reproduce it without steel tools and lathes. So immediately, questions started flying. Who carved this? Why those symbols? And how did it end up here, buried under layers of earth in the middle of New Hampshire? The artifact was quickly dubbed the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, and Ladd donated it to the New Hampshire Historical Society, where it still rests today in a glass case. Over the decades, countless researchers have examined it, each walking away with more questions than answers. When scientists first studied the drill holes, they found something shocking. The precision was incredible. Both holes had a uniform diameter, smooth internal walls, and no sign of flaking. Under magnification, microscopic grooves showed that the holes had been made by a rotating drill tipped with a harder material, possibly even diamond. But that kind of tool wouldn't appear until thousands of years later. So, if not a native artifact, then what? Some said it was Celtic, others claimed Phoenician. There were even whispers of Egyptian influence because of the hieroglyph-like carvings. The truth is, it fits none of them perfectly. The stone seems to belong nowhere, like it's a piece cut out of another time and dropped into ours by mistake. Let's pause here. Imagine that for a second. The year is 1872. No one has flown a plane. No one has split an atom. The idea of humans existing tens of thousands of years ago in North America was still controversial. And yet, in someone's backyard, an artifact appears that looks like it came from a lost civilization. You can almost picture those workers staring at it in silence, knowing they just unearthed something history couldn't explain. Now, there's a theory that says the stone could have been made in the 19th century as a commemorative gift, maybe even by Seneca Ladd himself. But there's one big problem with that. The level of polish, the complexity of the symbols, the depth of the grooves, none of it matches the tools or styles used by local craftsmen at the time. No other object like it exists. If someone carved it as a hoax or a tribute, they left behind no record, no copy, no explanation. Just this single, flawless artifact. And that's where the story starts to drift into the unknown, because every time experts test it, the answers get stranger. The quartzite it's made from isn't local to New Hampshire. It would have to come from hundreds of miles away, maybe even outside the continent. That means whoever made it either traveled a vast distance or obtained the material through trade that predates all known routes. Let's think about that symbol of the face carved into one side. It's not a normal face. It has exaggerated eyes, a triangular nose, almost alien-like proportions. Some archaeologists compare it to Mesoamerican art, like the Olmec heads or Mayan masks. Others say it resembles ancient carvings from the Mediterranean. But again, those cultures never reached this far north, unless they did. A few bold researchers have suggested that the Mystery Stone could be evidence of transoceanic contact long before Columbus. Imagine that! Ancient sailors from distant lands reaching the New World thousands of years ago, leaving behind tiny clues, artifacts that no one knows how to read. This stone could be one of them. Now, skeptics argue that this is just wishful thinking. They say maybe it's just a local ceremonial piece, maybe made to mark a peace treaty or a burial. But the problem remains: the drilling, the perfect symmetry. No primitive stone tool could create that. Even modern electric drills leave different marks. Whoever did this used something we can't explain. One study from the early 2000s used scanning technology to measure the precision of the holes, and they found that they aligned within fractions of a millimeter. That's machining-level accuracy. For something supposedly ancient, that's impossible. Unless those people had technology we don't think existed back then. And then there's the meaning behind the carvings themselves. Each sard tells a story. But what story? Some see it as an astronomical map. Sun, moon, stars, maybe even an eclipse. Others believe it's a timeline, a record of some great event lost to history. The face could represent a god or a visitor. The arrows and dots might indicate travel or migration. But the truth is, no one's cracked it. It sits there, daring us to understand it, as if whoever made it left it on purpose, waiting for the right generation to figure it out. What's even more fascinating is that the stone feels designed to be held. Its oval shape fits perfectly into the palm, smooth and balanced, almost like a ceremonial object, maybe even a key. Some researchers describe it as an ancient hand talisman, something meant to connect the holder with something beyond this world. And here's where the story takes a stranger turn. There's an old legend among some tribes in the region about a gift from the sky, a black stone said to hold the memory of the gods. It was said to be hidden near a lake, buried where the earth remembers. When the Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone was found, some people couldn't help but connect the dots. Could this be the same stone from that legend? Let's be honest, there's no proof. But that doesn't stop the imagination, because so much about this artifact feels deliberate. The placement, the polish, the mystery around its discovery. It almost feels like someone buried it intentionally, maybe to protect it or to pass a message through time. Even today, under museum lights, it glows faintly, like it's alive. You can see your reflection curve across its surface. Those ancient grooves catch the light like veins of silver. It's haunting. People who visit say it gives off a strange feeling, like it's watching. Now, if we step back and look at the bigger picture, we start to see patterns. Around the world, there are similar anomalies: carved stones, out-of-place artifacts, precision cuts that defy explanation. The Baghdad Battery, the Antikythera mechanism, the Piri Reis map, they all whisper the same thing: that ancient people might have known far more than we give them credit for. The Winnipesaukee Stone might just be the North American chapter of that same forgotten story. Some researchers have even suggested that the holes were used to mount the stone on a stand or base, like a display. Maybe it was part of a larger object, an ancient machine, a ceremonial staff, or even a navigational instrument. Imagine if this small piece was once the centerpiece of something grand, an object that could track the stars or mark the changing of seasons. Others believe the stone might have been a message, something meant for future generations. Maybe those carvings aren't decorations, but data, a coded language carved in symbols instead of words. And maybe, just maybe, we haven't learned how to read it yet. Every few years, new researchers come forward with fresh ideas, but the truth remains sealed. The museum has tested it for everything: tool marks, carbon traces, residue, pigment, but it stays silent. It gives nothing away. It's as if it's mocking us, holding its secret through centuries of human curiosity. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some exist to remind us that history is deeper, older, and stranger than we think. When you stand before the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, you're not just looking at a rock. You're staring into a void between timelines, a whisper from a forgotten hand, a reminder that the past might not be what we think it is. And every now and then, when you imagine those workers in 1872 wiping dirt from that dark oval stone, you can almost feel what they must have felt. A chill, a spark of awe, that sudden realization that they just touched something from another world. Because maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what they did. And that's another secret pulled from the depth of time, explorers. Each mystery brings us closer to understanding how little we truly know about our past. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden truth, make sure to like the video. It really helps. Comment your favorite theory below and tell me which mystery you want next. Your curiosity builds this community, one discovery at a time. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just be the most unbelievable one yet. Until then, keep your eyes open and your mind questioning, because the past never sleeps. It just waits for those brave enough to search.